No one, not the principal, nor the students, nor the janitorial staff, had quite foreseen the logistical inconvenience of a global pandemic. It was, in equal measure, the very best and the very worst of times. For the most part, it had been a rather tedious, predictable sort of existence. But not always. Definitely not always. Some boys spent their days building bridges and breaking beds. They called it Bed Wars, a season of great strategic conquest but very little actual sleep. Others engaged in the clandestine business of making personal phone calls. It was often a far more compelling narrative than the Big Mac Daddy meat and potatoes. Then came the frantic ritual of joining Google Meets on time. No one, of course, possessed the courage to be late for Mr. John's class. Next arrived the subsequent awkward silence, a stalemate between the hopeful teacher and a class that was, for the most part, unconscious. However, the virtual era would eventually come to an end, a strange 2-year intermission before we finally returned. The re-entry was a matter of bureaucratic compliance. 2-meter proximity, excessive hygiene, and mandatory vaccinations. However, the masks did eventually come off, sometimes by choice, sometimes by direct faculty request. This act, one could argue, was a perfectly fitting metaphor for the subsequent shedding of our own social inhibitions.
The windmills, they're driving the whales crazy. Obviously, it's crazy.
I beg your pardon, look at the cataclysmic damage non was caused under your administration subsidies. You're tracking a 1.2-degree deviation of 14% increase in glacial velocity and 412.5 parts per million of carbon. The math is subsidies.
Preposterous! The United States president remains the solitary beacon of sanity in this tragically misguided conflict. And besides...
Silence! Climate change is real, approaching, and we need to prepare.
But while the global leaders argued, the real diplomacy was happening on the pitch, through the formation of self-appointed football leagues. We had our very own lawnmower, a precision-engineered rocket, and a man whose reflexes could have saved the Titanic. At long last came the diploma program. It had begun with a juvenile sense of optimism and excitement as we adorned our uniforms with the blue stripes of maturity and responsibility, entering what would become our home for the next 2 years. That optimism, however, was short-lived as we were faced with the harsh reality of the DP. It became an experience defined by an exhausting wealth of acronyms. The IO, the IA, the EE, and the TOK. And at times it felt entirely insurmountable. But if the burden was heavy, it was at least shared. We proved that while the individual might falter, the group, by some small miracle of solidarity, would endure. As Mr. Francois once told me, there is peculiar irony to the fact that our most cherished recollections are forged not in the moments of ease, but in the trenches of a shared and rather exhausting struggle. Both the grueling and the grand, this chapter would finally come to an end. The frantic energy of the last 2 years distilled into silent halls and empty lockers, eager to leave, yet somehow longing to stay. As we submit our final papers and say our last goodbyes, we realize that while the blue stripes may eventually fade, the collective exhaustion and the people we shared it with are permanent.